Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS Treasury disbursed 25 million more economic impact payments under the American Rescue Plan. Social Security and other beneficiaries bring total to more than 156 million payments, VA beneficiary payments to be disbursed on April 14th. So we have IR 2021-77, April 7th, 2021, Washington. Today, the Internal Revenue Service, the U.S. Department of the Treasury, and the Bureau of the Fiscal Service announced they are disbursing more than 25 million payments in the fourth batch of economic impact payments from the American Rescue Plan. So the IRS still sending out payments, sending out a whole lot of payments here. They've been sending them out in waves. The first wave, I would think, make basically the easier ways for them to have, meaning the payments that they can get to as quickly as possible. Those related to people who have filed the tax return and who have the direct deposit information so they can get that money out as quick as possible. They then moved to the mailing, so they sent things out by mail and started to mail those out. They also then wanted to work for those payments, which took a little bit longer here, for the payments related to people that are getting benefits from other areas, such as Social Security benefits and whatnot, who have not filed a tax return, and the IRS still having their information from the information of these other places where they had to go talk to and think about and whatnot. And so they get those payments out. So issuing those payments, and we still have the VA beneficiary payments to be disbursed on April 14th. So if you're in that category, they're looking, the date they have at this point, April 14th on them. Also note that you might be in a situation where you're saying someone else got a payment and I haven't got the payment yet. There could be the most likely situation if you're talking about like VA beneficiaries, or if you're talking about like Social Security beneficiaries and so on. If one person had filed the tax return, even if they're getting benefits, then it's more likely that they got the payment faster because the IRS had the information from the tax return, did not have to go to the other institution in order to figure out, the payment and then send it out. Or if they used a non-filer tool last year when that tool was available, which is no longer available this year, then it's likely that they had that information probably sent them out sooner. So you could have a situation, of course, with people that receive benefits that possibly got the payment already, and those would be the likely scenarios of it. And now the IRS is trying to pick up, by working with the other departments, these other payments, and once again, the VA beneficiary payments to be disbursed on April 14th. Okay, so today's announcement brings the total disbursed so far to more than 156 million payments, with a total value of approximately $372 billion since these payments began rolling out to Americans in batches as announced on March 12th. The fourth batch of payments began processing on Friday, April 2nd, with an official payment date of April 7th, with some people receiving direct deposits in their accounts earlier as provisional or pending deposits. Here is additional information on this batch of payments. So this batch of payments includes, this batch includes more than 25 million payments with a total value of more than $36 billion. The largest block of these payments went to Social Security beneficiaries who don't file a 2020 or 2019 tax return and didn't use the non-filer tool last year. So that's who this last round, I believe round 4 we're on at this point, is going out to. So they're trying to work with these other basically agencies such as the Social Security beneficiaries. If you had filed the tax return and you're getting Social Security benefits and whatnot, then you may have got the payment already, or hopefully should have. But if you don't file a tax return because you don't need to, because your income's below a certain threshold, and you get the benefits, then those are the people that they're trying to get to now, and it takes a little bit longer apparently because they got to work with the Social Security and other departments of the government and kind of work together in order to do that. So more than 19 million payments with a total value of more than $26 billion went to these beneficiaries, which includes Social Security Retirement, Survivor, or Disability SSDI beneficiaries. More than 3 million payments with a total value of nearly $5 billion went to Supplemental Security Income SSI beneficiaries, and nearly 85,000 payments with a total value of more than $119 million went to Railroad Retirement Board RRB beneficiaries. This batch includes additional ongoing supplemental payments for people who earlier in March received payments based on their 2019 tax returns, but are eligible for a new or larger payment based on their recently processed 2020 tax returns. This batch includes more than 1 million of these plus up, quote, plus up, end quote, payments with a total value of more than $2 billion. That's probably the most confusing component of these payments as they're going out here. This kind of idea that the EIP 1 and EIP 2 are kind of similar. EIP 3, the EIP 3, the one we're talking about now, with the fourth round of payment for EIP 3, is a little bit confusing because it's not tied to the 2020 tax returns with the prepayment of the recovery rebate credit, but it's kind of like the similar process so that we saw in last year with EIP 1 and EIP 2, although now the prepayment is a prepayment of the credit that's going to be on the 2021 tax return, which wouldn't be filed until 2022, and the prepayments then is going to be based on the prior tax return, just like EIP 1 and EIP 2 was. They were based on the prior tax returns, and then you had to remedy the situation if there were any discrepancies with the credit, the recovery rebate credit at the end of the year. So EIP 3, similar situation in that we're going to use 2020 tax return, even though the actual credit is tied to 2021 return. We're going to use 2020 if it's there, but they extended the 2020 tax filing date, so many people haven't filed 2020 or hadn't when the payment went out. And if that was the case, they based it on 2019 information. One problem is that you could see what's going to happen here is the 2019 tax return could have had higher income on it, which means you would have been less eligible or not eligible at all, possibly due to income limitations for the payment. But if you were to have filed the 2020 tax return, then you may have been eligible given the fact that many people had much lower income in 2020 due to the whole problem that happened in 2020. So what's the remedy for that situation? Do you have to wait all the way until you file the 2021 tax return to calculate the recovery rebate credit and sometime in 2022? That's kind of the situation we're at with EIP 1 and EIP 2. Whereas if those were wrong, you file the 2020 tax return and file for the recovery rebate credit to make up the difference. EIP 3, that would be a long time to wait because it's still pretty close to the beginning of the year here. Therefore, what you do in that situation is you file your 2020 tax return. You don't need to do anything special with regards to EIP 3. You can't really do anything special with regards to EIP 3, I believe. You can remedy any problems with EIP, Economic Impact Payments 1 and 2, with the recovery rebate credit, but simply by filing the 2020 tax return and putting the proper income, which may be lower than the 2019 income, the IRS should be able to automatically pick that up on their side and give you what they're calling a, quote, plus up, end quote, payment for that missing component. So once again, if you didn't get the payment because your 2019 tax return is what they based EIP 3 on, and your income was higher, but your income was a lot lower in 2020 because you got, the problems happened in 2020 here, then the remedy is to file the tax return so that the IRS knows that your income is lower, at least related to EIP 3, and then they should basically automatically give you this plus up payment. If that doesn't happen, you would think that the ultimate remedy for any problems with EIP 3 and any other EIPs that happen in the future would be then to file the tax return in 2021 for 2021 in 2022 with the recovery rebate credit in a similar fashion as we've seen in the past. But hopefully they get everything right before that point. In any case, more than 1 million payments with a total value of nearly $3 billion went to people for whom the IRS previously did not have information to issue a payment, but who recently filed a tax return and qualified for an economic impact payment. So if you didn't get the economic impact payments, you're not getting your economic impact payments, then it's possible the IRS still doesn't have your information, even though they kind of really tried to pick everybody up last year with the tool and all that kind of stuff. So you got to file the tax return. In that case, if they don't have anything about you, you're not getting any payments from any other federal institution that they can pick the information up from, and you don't file a tax return, you could file an informational return, basically, and you could do so typically for free, and they should then have the information to pick up any payments. And when you do so, you could typically pick up, if you didn't get EIP 1 and 2 with the recovery rebate credit on that tax return, you can basically file for free, and then you should be able to qualify for EIP 3, and the IRS should automatically be able to pick that up as well. So payments to this group and the quote plus up end quote payments noted above will continue on a weekly basis going forward as the IRS continues processing tax returns from 2020 and 2019. Overall, this fourth batch of payments contains nearly 24 million direct deposit payments with a total value of over $33 billion and more than 1 million paper check payments with a total value of nearly $3 billion. Additional information is available on the first three batches of economic impact payments from the American Rescue Plan, which began processing on March 26th, March 19th, and March 12th. There's links to those items here. No action is needed by most people to obtain this round of economic impact payments. People can check the Get My Payment tool on IRS on to see if their payment has been scheduled. So you can check the payment to see if it's been scheduled. There's a link to the Get My Payment here. There's not too much you can do to kind of solve any problems with the payment here because the IRS is basically on autopilot and they've got their money gun out there. They're just shooting money out. Really, they're busy just shooting money everywhere at this point in time. So they're not, you can't really ask them any questions at this point. But there is that one situation where, of course, if they don't have your information at all, then you can file a tax return, or if they only have your 2019 tax return and your income is above a certain threshold so that you don't think you'll get the payment, but you want to file 2020, then, and your income will be lower, possibly making it, threshold being low enough to get the payment, then you might want to file the 2020 tax return at that point. So there is a remedy for the EIP 1 and EIP 2, of course. That would be to file the tax return and get the recovery rebate credit. The remedy for EIP 3 is somewhat limited right now because they're busy just shooting money out at this point and they don't have a lot of time to do everything else. But the one remedy you have there is if your 2019 tax return AGI was higher, that your 2020 file your 2020 tax return and they should be able to automatically pick that up. And that's one thing that some people may be able to do. So payments to non-filer VA beneficiaries will be disbursed on April 14th. So for IRS continues to review data received from Veterans Affairs, the VA, which covers veterans and their beneficiaries who receive compensation and pension, the C&P benefit payments, who don't normally file a tax return. If no additional issues arise, the IRS expects to begin processing these VA payments files at the end of this week. Because the majority of these payments will be dispersed electronically, they would be received on official payment date of April 14th. The IRS projects VA beneficiary payment information would be available in the Get My Payments tool this weekend, April 10th, 11th. Payments continue to be made rapidly and efficiently. The IRS and Treasury are disbursing economic impact payments authorized by the American Rescue Plan quickly and successfully while improving on previous rounds of payments. So they're kind of trying to say here, we're doing a good job, people. Come on. We're doing a good job. They are sending out a lot of money. So I would say, it can't be that easy. But in any case, within 2 weeks of the American Rescue Plan becoming law, the IRS and Treasury had started disbursing 127 million payments, including 107 million completed direct deposits. At a similar point during the first round of economic impact payments authorized a year ago, the first payments had yet to be completed. Payments to Social Security and other federal beneficiaries are being issued faster than they were during the first round of payments a year ago. Approximately 85% of the current round of payments have been made by direct deposit, up from 74% in the first round of payments and 77% in the second round. This helps to explain payments for millions of American families. Direct deposits are also more likely to be successfully delivered than mailed payments, and the return rate for direct deposits is also lower than previous rounds of payments. So over 3.1 million direct express cardholders have received payments electronically, more than 500,000 more than in previous rounds. Making most of these payments to direct express cards enables cardholders, many of whom are unbanked, to receive the economic impact payment the same way they typically receive their federal benefits. So I think that there are some benefits, of course, to those cards. I guess if you don't have the bank, if you have a check, you got to cash it somewhere, which could cost. If you get a card, then they're thinking maybe that would be a better form of payment. But in any case, so they're trying to compare to the first rounds last year and whatnot, and justify their performance in the current year. So you be the judge on that. Special reminder for those who don't normally file a tax return: some federal benefits recipients may need to file a 2020 tax return, even if they don't usually file, to provide information the IRS needs to send payments for a qualified dependent. Eligible individuals in this group should file a 2020 tax return to be considered for an additional payment for their qualified dependent as quickly as possible. So note, last year they had that kind of tool that they were trying to pick up for those people that don't file a tax return, but they might have Social Security or something like that, or if they don't file a tax return and the IRS doesn't have their information at all, they wanted you to file this tool so that you have the informational tool, including the dependents, so you can pick up the dependents. They don't have that tool this time. Hopefully they still have that information from last year, but you could have situations, even if you've used the tool, where it's different, meaning you might have had a dependent, for example, that was over 17 and they wouldn't have qualified in the last two payments at all, and they would be beneficial at this point. Or you might have a new dependent, like a new baby or something like that in the current year. If the IRS doesn't know about it, you're not going to get a payment related to that dependent and would need to file a tax return. Shouldn't be too difficult, or at least should be somewhat free, hopefully, to file if you're below a certain threshold, because you can't get access to the software to do so. People who don't normally file a tax return and don't receive federal benefits may qualify for these economic impact payments. This includes those experiencing homelessness, the rural poor, and others. Individuals who don't get a first or second round economic impact payment or get less than the full amounts may be eligible for the 2020 recovery rebate credit, but they'll need to file a 2020 tax return. So remember, you got to keep these two things separate. Round 1, round 2 economic impact payments. Remedy, file the 2020 tax return, get the recovery rebate credit. Remedy for round 3 is just to give the IRS the information if they don't have it, which would mean to file the 2020 tax return so that they have that information so they can then process the payments. So see the special section on irs.gov claiming the 2020 recovery rebate credit if you aren't required to file a tax return. Free tax return preparation is available for qualifying people. There's a link to that here. You want to check that out. The tax software, highly useful. I highly recommend using tax software, especially as things get complicated with these recovery rebate credits and earned income credits and refundable credits and whatnot. Tax software, helpful. And it's free, possibly, if it's below a certain threshold. Check it out. The IRS reminds taxpayers that the income level in this new round of economic impact payments have changed. This means that some people won't be eligible for the third payment, even if they received a first or second impact payment or claimed a 2020 recovery rebate credit. Payments will begin to be reduced for individuals making $75,000 or above in adjusted gross income. So if you have over $75,000, it starts to phase out. It'll end at $80,000. Married filing joint starts at $150,000, phases out to $160,000, where that would be the end. You wouldn't get any at that point. The payments end at $80,000 for individuals, $160,000 for married filing jointly. People with adjusted gross income above these levels are ineligible for a payment. Individuals can check the Get My Payment tool on irs.gov to see the payment status of these payments. Additional information on economic impact payments is available on irs.gov. There's also a link to them here. There'll be a link to this in the description.